Hello, friends, welcome back. Now we are going to start a new chapter in this course, Programming in C Functions. This is the new chapter which we are going to start here in this tutorial. In this tutorial, I will give you only the introduction why a programmer needs to define his own functions in a C program. As I told you in the first tutorial that C is a function-oriented programming language, and every C program consists of one or more functions. Execution of the C program starts from main function. So every C program must have main function. C supports library functions. We have studied about some library functions like printf and scanf in previous tutorials. Apart from library functions, C also allows programmers to define their own functions for carrying out various individual tasks. Now, see why a programmer needs to define his own functions in a C program. It will be clear after this example. Now, see, suppose we have to write a program to evaluate the value of this expression 7 factorial plus 3 factorial plus 5 factorial. So, when you have to write a C program for this, what you will do? First, you will write a main function. In that main function, what you need to do? You need to evaluate the value of 7 factorial. You need to evaluate the value of 3 factorial. You need to evaluate the value of 5 factorial. And whatever the result schemes, you need to add all the results to get the value of this expression 7 factorial plus 3 factorial plus 5 factorial. So to evaluate this value 7 factorial, what you need to do? You need to write a set of instructions to evaluate 7 factorial. So you also need to write a set of instructions to evaluate 3 factorial. So for 5 factorial also you need to write a set of instructions to evaluate 5 factorial. So what you need to do, you need to write a set of instructions to evaluate the factorial 3 times, right? So here in this case what you need to do, you need to write a set of instructions which perform same function, which evaluate the factorial of a number, right? You need to write that set of instruction 3 times, right? You need to write this set of instructions 3 times in your program within the main function, right? To evaluate the factorial of a given number, right? So you will find that the same means you need to write a set of instruction which is performing the same function 3 times. So another option for that is that you will write a function to evaluate the factorial of a given number, right? You will define a function within the C program. That function will evaluate the factorial of a given number. So in this case, what you will do within the main function of the C program, what you will do whenever you need to evaluate this value 7 factorial, then you will simply call that function, right? You will simply call that function which will evaluate the factorial of a given number, right? Here this function will evaluate the factorial of 7, right? So this function which evaluate the factorial of a given number, this function will have instructions which will evaluate the value of a factorial of a given number. So when you need the factorial of 3, then again you will call this function, right? This function will evaluate the factorial of 3. When you need 5 factorials value, then also you will call this function, and this function will evaluate this factorial of 5, right? So in this case what happened, you have defined a function, and in that function you have written only once the set of instructions which evaluate the factorial of a given number, right? Here the set of instructions which evaluate the factorial of a given number, you don't need to write it three times. You have written it only one times. You are right, because you have defined a function, and that function can be called at many places within the main program, right? That function can be called many times, right? And it can every time it can operate on separate data set, right? It can be called at many places, at many portions of the program. So this is the benefit of defining this is the benefit of defining your own function within the C program. So, what is a function? A function is a self contained program segment that carries out some specific, well defined task. So, how a programmer can define his own function and how that function can be used. It is a cover for that you need to study about three topics, right? There are three main concepts you need to understand. So when you want to write your own functions, when you want to define your own functions and to use them. So these three concepts are defining a function, function prototype, and calling a function. So about these three topics, we will study in separate tutorials. So what I hope that in this tutorial, you have understood what are the functions, right? And what is the use of defining your own functions within the C program. What are the advantages of this programmer defined functions in a C program?